right, second hour on a Friday can mean only one thing. It means senior producer from NFL Films, Greg Cosell, joining us, also co-host of ESPN's NFL Matchup Show. And we've got the Monday Nighter, Bills at Falcons, to discuss. Greg Cosell's weekly appearances on One Bills Live, presented by Pepsi. Pepsi is the official soft drink of the Buffalo Bills. Food deserves Pepsi. I think I deserve a Pepsi, too, right about now. I'm a little thirsty. Greg, welcome in. An interesting matchup here. It's been a Falcons team that has been very up and down. They don't always look like they're playing like a team, if that makes sense. Tons of individual skill at the skill positions, like oodles of elite talent. But I have a tough time seeing them. They don't look like an 11-man unit on offense or defense at times, and I think it's kind of compromised their consistency here.
Well, I think you would expect that to some degree on offense when you're dealing with a quarterback that's only started 7 games in the
Right.
NFL. So you'd expect that there'd be some inconsistency. To me, they have the best back in the NFL in Bijan Robinson, and he's obviously a terrific runner there. They're a predominant outside zone run team. That's their foundation. They run outside zone more than any team in the NFL. So that's what you have to stop on the defensive side of the ball. But they use Robinson really effectively in the pass game as well. Not only do they offset him in the backfield in shotgun, and they're in shotgun a very, very high percentage of the time, but they also split him out, detach him from the formation, get him matched up. So you have to deal with him as a receiver as well. Penix, he throws the ball outside the numbers a lot. He's got a strong arm, and he likes throwing the ball outside the numbers. He's not been as effective throwing it between the numbers, even though he can make those throws. But that's where he feels, I think, most comfortable, is throwing it outside the numbers. Obviously, those are cleaner throws. There's fewer bodies.
Yeah, he threw the interception he threw last weekend was like right inside the numbers, I guess.
Yep.
And you could see he threw it, and then he knew. Then he saw it after it was gone, and he couldn't bring it back, and he couldn't pull the string on it. Do you think it just because he has trouble seeing it inside, or does he just feel safer to throw it outside?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that interception. I actually didn't think that was necessarily a poor read. I think he left that ball significantly short. And I don't know whether, like you say, Steve, he just pulled the string, or all of a sudden he saw the guy and thought, oh, maybe it's not the right throw, but it became a less than confident throw.
Right.
But your larger point is, I think one of the challenges that young quarterbacks face as they make the transition to the league is the changing of the hash marks. So in college football, there's really no middle of the field in a strict sense. In the NFL, there is a middle of the field. And I think for a lot of young quarterbacks, it probably looks like there's 15 defenders out there because there's a lot of bodies in the middle of the field. And, I don't know what's in Michael Penix's head, so I can't speak to exactly how he feels. But I know that for a lot of young quarterbacks, and I've had this opportunity, I remember having a great conversation with Kevin O'Connell about this. For a lot of young quarterbacks, the middle of the field is something that they shy away from at times because it's muddy. There's a lot of people there. And so it's just, to use your word, Steve, it's safer to throw it outside.
Right.
What are your thoughts about the matchups here with the Falcons offense, Greg? I'm curious how some of the early season opponents have handled this because we know Drake London and Pitts are both gigantic targets at 6'4" and 6'6", and both of them can run very well. What have most opponents done to match up with them, knowing London, lines up in the slot a fair amount, and usually your smaller corners are in there, and I don't know if you want that kind of a matchup.
Yeah, well, one thing they started to do going back to sort of mid-season a year ago was he was essentially a slot receiver until about mid-season a year ago, and then they started playing him outside more. Now, outside is a relative term because with a lot of reduced splits, and keep in mind Zach Robinson is their offensive coordinator, and he came from the Rams. So there's a lot of reduced splits. So even though he's technically an outside receiver, Brownie, he lines up a lot in reduced splits.
Yeah.
Now, again, that your slot corner won't be over him if that's the case, but he works better when he can work sort of closer to the middle of the field. He's not a true outside receiver. He's not a true boundary X type guy. So, but he's very effective in the middle. He's really more of a possession type player. One of the reasons that they use Robinson so much as a receiver and detach him from the formation is they don't really feel like their third wide receiver is that guy. They play Ray McLeod, but they
Right.
don't really feel like he's that guy. So they feel like Robinson in many cases is a better receiver. And they'll line up at times in what we call the pony package, where they have both Robinson and Algier on the field together, and Algier is in the backfield and Robinson is detached. So again, one of the things that does to a defense is, depending on down and distance, I would imagine, is you have to decide how you want to play that. Do you want to play that with your with your base, in which case who's going to play over Robinson, which is a strong indicator of whether it's man or zone to Penix, or do you want to play it in your nickel because Robinson's such a good receiver when he's detached?
Which one of those two guys, London or Kyle Pitts, which one do you think is their more of a centerpiece to their offense?
London,
I know
sure.
Bijan Robinson is the centerpiece, but
he's the foundation pretty
Right.
much of everything.
But I'm
to
talking
start
about
with.
as you go down the pecking order. Is it Drake London
Yeah.
or Kyle Pitts?
It's London. Now Pitts, it's funny. Pitts, for the last couple of years, and again, this is a contract year, Steve, so you could certainly speak to that, having played with guys in that situation. But the last couple of years, Pitts has, for want of a better term, has often looked uninspired. This year, he looks pretty inspired, and he's got a lot of talent. And he's another guy that can line up all over the formation. They can do a lot of things formationally. So, again, I wouldn't say at their core the Bills are a man coverage defense. They're probably much more of a zone founded defense. So it may not have a huge impact on how they go about lining up. But Pitts is very, very gifted.
Flipping it over to the defensive side, we know that Atlanta will throw some multiple front looks up there. Sometimes play 3-man front, 4-man front. They'll put Ellis up on the line. Divine Diablo is kind of a chess piece for them also. What do you have to look out for with what they throw at teams defensively?
Now, I'm sure a lot of people are going to say they haven't played great teams, and maybe that's true. But when I watch tape, I'm not thinking that way. Number one, they've played 82% of their defensive snaps in nickel, which is the second highest percentage in the league. They don't play dime. They're very good on third down. They have been. Again, maybe it's opponent based. They have a really high blitz percentage, and they play a ton of cover one. And I got to tell you guys, watching their defense, it's a fun defense to watch. There's a lot of multiple pieces here, a lot of movable chess pieces. They do an awful lot with their two linebackers, Ellis and Diablo. Now that they have Xavier Watts, we've been used over the years to seeing Jesse Bates pretty much be a back-end safety. Now that they have Watts, their safeties are more interchangeable. So it's not a case where, Bates just plays on the back end. They do a lot with their safeties. They play 4 rookies quite a bit. They've got a lot of young players up front. They move people around an awful lot. I mean, I came away watching their defense thinking this is not an easy defense to play against, particularly if you're going to get to third down.
You have to believe, though, Greg, that if they're going to play in nickel, the Bills are going to definitely run the ball. I mean,
well, the Bills are going to run the ball no matter who they play.
Right, but that's even more incentive, I think.
No question. But, it's interesting. We've talked about this. I always, every time I watch the Bills, sometimes, and again, they score a lot of points. Obviously, this was not a good game for them. I'm sure when Josh watched the tape on Monday, he was kicking himself. He left some things on the field. He probably knew it immediately, maybe even knew it when it happened. But, I always feel like there's more to be gotten from their pass game and at the intermediate levels. And, maybe who knows what the week is that they'll do that. That's obviously a Joe Brady question. But you're right. They're going to be a nickel. They're not going to change this week, I don't think. Now, when they do play base, it's a 5-2 front, and their edge players tend to be in the 5-2 front. Your old buddy Leonard Floyd and Ebiketie, but they also play Jalen Walker on the edge in their 5-2 front, the rookie from Georgia. And when they go to nickel, Walker's very much a movable chess piece. He lines up all over. Sometimes he rushes the quarterback. Sometimes he drops into coverage. They're getting really solid snaps from Brandon Dorius, who I think is in his second year, the Oregon kid, who I remember evaluating when he came out. So they've got a lot of pieces. And sometimes it takes time to come together with essentially a new coordinator first year for Jeff Ulbrich, with his defense. But they're fun to watch. I mean, if they were your defense, Brownie, you really enjoy watching them.
Yeah, well, I love Jalen Walker. He might have been my favorite guy in the draft. So,
yeah.
What do you think? What is the general idea when teams are facing the Bills? And we've been having people call us and tell us the Bills aren't taking the top off the defense, and it's been it's been my contention that teams are doing that not because of they're afraid of the wide receivers, but because they're afraid of Josh.
Yeah, and I can't speak to that. I don't know the answer to that question. I mean, clearly the quarterback is capable of taking the top off. That's not the issue. I mean, he's the most physically gifted quarterback in the league. He can do anything. But they don't really attack at the intermediate to intermediate deeper levels. And by that, I mean, I'm not saying you just drop back and throw go balls. That's not my point, Steve, and I think you know that. Yeah. But they don't really do a lot of that. And, that's obviously, I assume, a Joe Brady thing. I don't know the answer to that. I'm sure a lot of fans, maybe they think, the receivers aren't good enough. But then it comes down to concepts in the pass game. And I think you can do certain things, and maybe they just feel, look, normally they score a lot of points. Normally they control games. And maybe they just feel like, let's be risk averse until we don't have to be risk averse. If you know what I mean. Does that make sense?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Because if you're going to score 27, 30 points a game, you're going to win a lot of games.
Yeah.
Right.
The problem for Atlanta seems to be in the red zone on both sides of the ball, bottom third in the league on offense and defense. I understand with Penix kind of learning his way, the windows get tighter down there, and maybe he's a little more hesitant. Have they been able to run the ball down there from what you've seen?
Yeah, see, I'm surprised about the offense because to me, they've got a run game because I think their O-line's pretty good. I mean, I think it's a really solid O-line with some really good players, some veterans, some younger players. I think, and now I haven't charted their play calls in the red zone, but it would just seem to me that they'd be able to run the ball effectively in the red zone, and it hasn't quite worked out that way. But I think they should be able to. So I'm sure that's something they've worked on in the bye week, something to get better at. But and defensively, they play a lot of young players. Don't forget Terrell, and I don't know what his status is. I know was it a hamstring? He's missed the last couple of games.
Yeah, he practiced yesterday on a limited basis.
Right, because they use him now. Now the Bills don't have that one receiver you say you've got to match up to. On the outside, but they use him as a matchup corner. So like I look at this corner group for the Falcons, and to my way of thinking, you can attack them if Terrell's not out there because it's going to be Alfred on one side, and he's been a slot corner most of his career, but he got beaten out this year by the rookie Bowman from Oklahoma. And then they've got Hughes, who's been in the league and solid pro, but I think those guys are attackable. And so I'll be very curious to see, what the plan is.
Yeah.
All right.
You got anything else for Greg here, Steve?
So I'm liking this Atlanta thing.
You like the matchup?
I do.
I'm a little nervous about some of the defensive matchups.
Yeah, this I think, look, obviously weather won't be an issue. It's a fast surface indoors. I know they're a running football team, and maybe it's just the way I think about the game sometimes. It depends on the given week. But I would just love to see them come out and be a little aggressive with the pass game. And I'm not talking about throwing 40-yard balls, nor am I talking about dropping back and throwing it, 50 yards down the field. But I think, the one thing that you have to be aware of, I think both Bates and Watts are just naturally instinctive players at safety. And you just got to be careful. Bates is as good as there is in the league at recognizing formation, splits, receiver distribution, location, route concepts. You just got to be careful with him.
What about their pass rush?
I think they are really good schematically. I'm not sure yet they have the edge guy that you go, we better stop him. They hope that Pierce can become that guy. Walker is not really being used that way right now. Pierce certainly is. They have Leonard Floyd, who you guys know. I don't think you have the one guy, so it's schemed up a lot. They've done a really good job at times attacking and breaking down protections and getting guys in clean on third down that based on the protection call that you just can't pick up. So that's the thing you have to be aware of. And Bowman's been a part of that coming from the slot. So those are the things you have to be more aware of than oh my God, we better stop this guy or else we don't have a pass game.
Greg, thanks as always. Appreciate it. And we'll catch up with you after the bye week.
And who do they have after the bye week?
Carolina.
Carolina, that's right.
On the road.
Is that home or away?
That's on the road.
Okay. All right. Well, here we go. And then Chiefs at home. All right. Well, this is a big one. They got to win this one because, this coming off a loss, you want to get back on track, obviously. So we'll see.
No question about it. Thanks again, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bills Mafia, it's tailgating season, and there's nothing better than an ice-cold Pepsi Zero Sugar to pair with your tailgating food rituals. As the great Josh Allen once said, Bills fans deserve Pepsi. For the home opener, Bills Mafia brought it, and so did Pepsi. They kicked off the tailgate season the right way, and they expect to keep it rolling throughout the rest of the year. Bills tailgates deserve Pepsi. Go Bills. So